This is the graphing test that included line plots and stem and leaf, and I just wanted to take a minute to go over the 5 questions that seem to be a little trickier for us as a class. And so I'm going to scroll down and show you this question first. Question 4. Question 4 was a pretty straightforward question, so I was a little surprised that a couple of us actually struggled with this one a little bit. Now, you basically had a set of data that you had to create a stem and leaf for. So the first thing I would have done is taken all of these numbers and I would have written them in order least to greatest on my thinking paper. So I can tell that my very first stem would be my single digit numbers. 4, if I'm going least to greatest like I always want to do with my data, 4, 5, 6, 6, 8. So you're looking at your 0 stem first, and when you look at just the 0 stem for A, B, C, and D, you actually can get the correct answer by just looking at that, because A leaves out one of the 6's. The 6 occurs twice, so we have to make sure it shows up twice in our stem and leaf, which would be either this option or this option. So then between C and D, C leaves off this 4. And so our best choice for this would have been D, because it includes all of the correct numbers in the 0 stem. Next question that we're going to take a look at is 5. 5 was again just creating a stem and leaf plot. So you had to have your numbers up here in order least to greatest. So again, I would have looked for the numbers that appeared in the 60s stem first, especially since they gave the 70s and 80s, so I knew that these stems had to go in order. So I would have first looked for my numbers in the 60s. I would have used my highlighter tool on the screen, and I would have highlighted the 68 and the 68, and I would have clicked and dragged those numbers right on over there. For the 70 stem, I would probably take my highlighter tool and highlight all the numbers that were in the 70 stem on PowerTest. Now this is not letting me highlight them all at once like your computer would have done on PowerTest, but you could have done that. Your other option would have been to take all of these numbers and put them in order least to greatest on your thinking paper so that you could see what belonged in each stem. So the biggest mistake I would probably see on this question would be students who forgot a number. So that's where another good check is to count how many numbers you were given. So you were given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 numbers. So before you left that question, you want to make sure you have 14 numbers in this section of your stem and leaf, because it's a way of double checking that you've used all the data. Next would be number 10. Question 10, these questions tend to be a little trickier because they are a TEI. You've got to pick all correct answers, and there's a lot of reading. And I know when we're on a math test, some of us don't like to do a whole lot of reading, but pretty much what I would have done is read one and checked it to the graph. So there were less runners who had a ribbon longer than 5/8 yard than those who had a ribbon shorter than 1/4 yard. So I need to know how many people had a ribbon longer than 5/8. So I'd go to my 5/8, and I would see that there are 1, 2, 3 people. For shorter than 1/4, I would go down to my 1/4 and go shorter. There's 3 people. Well, that means 3 and 3 is the same, so there is not less runners. So that's not true. There was only one ribbon that was 3/8 of a yard. So if I go check my 3/8, that is true. So this would be one of my correct answers right here. Ribbons of 1/8 yard and 7/8 yard had the same number of runners. 1/8 had 1, 2. 7/8 had 1, 2. So there's another correct answer for us. Last but not least, more than half the runners have ribbons that are 3/8 yard or shorter. So 3/8 yard or shorter is the key wording here. So we're going to count 3/8 or shorter. So we're going to go over here and count this person or shorter, which would go this way. So that means there are 4 people who fall into that category, which is not more than half of the runners. because we can see there's more than that over here on this side, with there being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 runners. So there's actually more than half of the runners are on this side of our line plot. So these two in the center would have been your correct answer. Number 11 wants to know, here's a bunch of data. Should we either use a line plot or a stem and leaf? So this is really a thinking question, and you really want to be on the lookout, again, as you're reading these, to really pay attention to things that are true and not true. So she should choose a line plot because a stem and leaf would only have one stem. Well, look at your data. All of these numbers are single digit, which means all of these would be in the same stem. So A is a very good sounding choice at this point, because a stem and leaf plot would only have one stem. There are no numbers in the 20s or the 30s that we could add to this. She should choose a stem and leaf because a line plot would have too many X marks over each number. That is really not a concern. At most, let's see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ones would be the most. X's over top of a 1 would be 6, which is not a huge amount. So B is not really true. She should choose a stem and leaf plot because the number of line for a line plot would need to be very long. The number line would only need to stretch from 0 to 6. That's not a huge amount, so that's not true. She should choose a line plot because a stem and leaf plot would have too many stems. So here we are again looking at the stems. Is it one stem, or are there going to be too many stems? The answer is A. She should choose a line plot because a stem and leaf would only have one stem, and it would be silly to create a stem and leaf if it only had one stem. 13 is a similar question. They want to know whether we would do a line plot or a stem and leaf. So here's all of our data. They've already got it in order least to greatest for us. So we have a number in the 40s, 50s, a lot in the 70s, a lot in the 80s, a lot in the 90s, and a couple of hundreds. And we want to know whether we should use a line plot or a stem and leaf. So really you're going to use the exact same strategy I just explained for number 11. And you're just going to look for information that makes sense or not. He should choose a stem and leaf plot because the number line for a line plot would need to be very long. Let's think. A number line for a line plot would have to stretch from 43 all the way to 100, and it would have to include every single number in between. That is a pretty long line. He should choose a line plot because a stem and leaf would only have two stems. Well, that right there proves that B is false, because we can tell that there's going to be lots of stems for this. 40s, 50s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 100. And of course we would put the 60 stem even though there's no numbers there. So this part makes that letter B not true. He should choose a line plot because a stem and leaf plot would have too many leaves for each stem. Again, too many leaves, not really a concern there. He should choose a stem and leaf plot because a line plot would have too many X's. And again, too many X marks, just like we talked about in the other question, not really a concern. So A is our best option for this question. Picking a stem and leaf because a number line for a line plot, if you were imagining having to create a stem and leaf for a line plot, you would not want to do a line plot that stretched all the way from 43 to 100. So A is your best choice. So I hope this clears up any confusion you may have had on the graphing test. Overall, you guys did really great. So let me know if you have any other questions.